Hello everybody, I am Tom and you are watching my Baldur's Gate 3 speculation series. Before we get started, if you find yourself liking this video, please leave it a like, and consider subscribing for more Baldur's Gate 3 content going forward. But with that, let's begin.
My, what manner of place is this? A patch of ground to call home. Some rest for the wicked, after all. What would suit the occasion? The words to a lullaby, perhaps. The mouse smiled brightly. It outfoxed the cat. Then down came the claw. And that, love, was that. They do know how to write them in Cormier, don't they? Well met, I am Raphael. Very much at your service.
Hello, Raphael. My name is Sven. How are you doing?
Charmed, I'm sure, in more ways than one. We should have a chat, you and I, but not here. No. This encampment is decidedly too middle of nowhere for my tastes. Come. There. Middle of somewhere.
Nice place you have here, I guess?
The House of Hope, where the tired come to rest, and the famished come to feed, lavishly. Go on, partake, enjoy your supper. After all, it might just be your last.
Alright, so... You know what, I'm actually quite hungry, literally, so I'm going to ignore him and fill my plate.
Not easily rattled, I see. Good. Makes the next part that much more straightforward. What's better than a devil you don't know? A devil you do. Am I a friend? Potentially. An adversary? Conceivably. But a savior? That's for certain.
Alright, well... Why don't you just tell me what you want?
Oh, a mere trifle. How dear is one's soul, really? A rhetorical question, of course, but let me venture an answer. It's worth very little, with a tadpole in your head. One skull, 2 tenants, and no solution in sight. I could fix it all, like that.
Alright, so... I need to think this over.
Take all the time you need, but make up your mind before you're counting down with tentacles. Try to cure yourself, shop around, beg, borrow, and steal. Exhaust every possibility until none are left. And when hope has been whittled down to the very marrow of despair, that's when you'll come knocking on my door. Hope. Such a tease.
So before continuing, just in case you're wondering, a lot of the mocap that you're seeing is not cleaned up, or everything is not 100% polished yet, so there's a couple of things here in these shots that are really not looking great. We know this, we see it also. These things will get fixed, so don't worry about that. Let's continue. You know what? I'm gonna rip out your mocking tongue. Yeah, because you're... Yeah, I'll rip out your mocking tongue.
Ah, yes, the tongue. Yet another piece of pleasurable anatomy you'll soon have to do without. All those pretty little symptoms, Sundering skin, dissolving guts, they haven't manifested yet, have they? One might say you're a paragon of luck. I'll be there when it runs out.
That was a devil. Well, sort of. Judging by the look of Raphael, he's a Cambion, which is a half-fiend, strictly speaking. One parent being a fiend, the other being some form of humanoid, whether that's a human or an elf. But whether or not Raphael is a true-blooded devil is largely irrelevant. He is definitely playing the part of a Baatorian perfectly. Let me start by giving a brief discussion on the lower planes and the differences between demons and devils. It's going to be very brief, by the way, as an in-depth video on this topic could go on for hours, but in the Forgotten Realms, in which Baldur's Gate takes place, there are outer planes of existence linked to each of the cosmic alignments of the universe. Put simply, good versus evil, as well as order versus chaos. What we're interested in today are the lower planes, specifically the planes of evil. I'm going to focus on the three main today, being the Abyss, the realm of the chaotic evil demons that wish to destroy everything in their path, Hades, the realm of neutral evil, home to the remorseless, pragmatic Yugoloths, and finally Baator, the Nine Hells, the home of the devils, lawful evil creatures that are the epitome of tyranny and dictatorial rule. From that short descriptor, you should get a vague sense of how these fiends differ. Firstly, demons. They rage on, destroying everything in their path. They're certainly capable of controlling their violent impulses, but only for a time. Sooner or later, well, let's be honest, sooner, they're going to snap and go back to what they do best, which is ripping, killing, and destroying. The Yugoloths, while not as chaotic as demons, they're not stringently lawful like devils either. They are, however, incredibly optimistic, however. So, if one of these persuasions will benefit them more than another, they'll be quick to partake. As such, Yugoloths are often seen working as mercenaries for both demons and devils, depending on their fancy. But finally, that brings us to today's topic, the devils. I found that many people have trouble picturing the idea of lawful evil, but it is rather simple. While the chaotic demons want to rip and destroy, a lawful devil wants to control, to subjugate, to dominate. As such, the Nine Hells is an interesting place. Everything is dictated by hierarchy. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything, up to and including the biology of the devils themselves. Ignoring a few exceptions, there is an infernal hierarchy of devils, and as one raises its power and status in the society, so too does its physical and magical power enhance, evolving it into a more powerful devil. For instance, the lowest true devil is an imp. If, however, this creature gains enough influence, it may be promoted by a greater devil, and in doing so it will physically transform, gaining power as it morphs into a larger and more intimidating spined devil. And with the possibility of promotion, also comes the chance of demotion. As such, devils are always trying to please those above them in the hierarchy, faithfully following orders. This isn't to say that if the opportunity arises, a devil won't backstab their betters. It is just that they do so in ways that aren't overtly against the rules. A devil will always follow the letter of the law. It's just somewhat flexible on the spirit of the law. As such, it's always advised to be very considerate when bargaining with a devil, and read, reread, and then read again the contract before you sign. Or better yet, don't sign. Chances are the devil is smarter than you, and will win out in the end. Before we get into the specifics of devil contracts, I feel like I should first go over why they make these contracts in the first place. And for that, we need to touch briefly on the Blood War. The War. An endless struggle between the forces of order versus the forces of chaos. The demons of the Abyss are endless and chaotic in nature. The plane itself will birth them spontaneously, giving them an infinite supply of fodder for their armies. The devils, however, have a far more complex form of creation. They are born from the condemnation of mortal souls, emerging from the River Styx with no memory of their previous life as a lemure. Pictured now, these tortured souls are barely sentient and unable to speak, and they aimlessly wander until a devil of a higher in the hierarchy decides that they want to promote them so they can get themselves a servant, usually being promoted directly to an imp. Because the creation of devils is limited in this way, they must go out of their way to actively corrupt mortal souls in an attempt to bolster their numbers for fighting the demons in the Blood War. This is where the act of contracts and deals gets its motivation. Every deal made by a devil in this way is backed by the Grand Lord of the Nine Hells himself, Asmodeus. I won't go too much into him now, as the origins and identity of him is... well, that could be a whole series of videos just by itself, but suffice it to say, Asmodeus is leagues above the kind of power that anything you're going to experience ever. His levels of power are comparable to, and potentially surpassing, the power of the gods. So, in most cases, a devil contract will involve getting something you desire in exchange for your soul. Maybe not immediately, but when you die, your soul will forevermore be property of the 9 hells. This isn't, however, the only thing a devil might accept as payment. It is worth noting that any mortal that breaks an infernal contract immediately forfeits their soul to Baator. So, a devil may accept something other than your soul as payment, but generally in such cases, the contract is written in such a way that the devil wants you to break it, and hence makes it prohibitively difficult to uphold your end of the bargain. If after all of this explanation you still wish to attempt to hoodwink a deal out of a devil that benefits you without forfeiting your eternal soul, my suggestion would be first to do everything you can to learn the devil's true name. If you have a devil's true name, you can, through rather dark magic, bind it to your will. Obviously, anything bound against its will is likely to resent its captor. However, the promise of freeing the devil is likely to make a good bargaining chip for a contract. Of course, this will surely come with other consequences along the way, but if you're determined this is the safest, in heavy quotation marks, safest, way to gain an infernal boon. Moving on now, I won't go over all the forms of devils in the hierarchy, but I will also list off some of my favourites, starting with the imp. Imps are the lowest level of true devil. A lemure is barely considered alive, and it isn't really even in devil society until it's promoted to an imp. An imp isn't particularly capable of sophisticated work, but they do make formidable spies, as not only can they fly and shapeshift into various small animals, like rodents or ravens, but they can also make themselves invisible at will. Being as comparably weak as they are, they're usually quite content to serve a master, even mortal masters. Although in the case of a mortal master, they'll always try and encourage them towards lawful evil acts. They can't really control this, it's kind of just part of their nature. They're always trying to corrupt and move people towards the lawful evil end of the spectrum so that they can gain more people for the Blood War. Once a devil is promoted above the status of an imp, they're unlikely to serve a master besides another devil unless forced by some form of magic, or the invocation of their true name. As such, it's very rare to see a mortal with a familiar that is a devil that's other than an imp. Anything greater, unlikely to serve them because it'll see itself as above the mortal. The imp, as with all devils actually, is immune to fire and poison damage. Additionally, the imp has a long scorpion-like stinger at the end of its tail. When attacking with the tail, the initial sting, which does about 5 damage, also releases a poison into the victim, doing an average of 10 damage, assuming the target fails its constitution saving throw. This is the main way they do damage. They'll often go invisible, try and sneak up onto someone, and sting them without them realizing. And that does quite a bit of damage. On your average, you're doing about 15 damage. For most low-level characters, that can wipe you out. But, moving on now to a more powerful devil, the Bone Devil. The Bone Devils, also known as Oceluths, are the highest rank of the lesser devils. They're particularly loathsome due to their drive of hate, lust, and envy. They're cruel by nature and revel in seeing those under them demoted. And as much as they resent doing so, they desperately grovel and attempt to curry favour with their betters in order to be promoted to the status of a greater devil. They feel so close to greatness, and as such are so envious of those above them, coveting the power that they feel is rightfully theirs. One of the more grotesque-looking devils, the Bone Devil has a vaguely humanoid body, but it's as if the body was emaciated and just a layer of skin is stretched tight over a skeletal frame. There's a long venomous tail that, similar to imps, is poisonous, but it's much longer and much deadlier as it curves out as a continuation of the striated spine, and erupting from their back are these unnatural 3 sets of large insectoid-like wings that can carry them surprisingly fast through the air. By this level of the hierarchy, a devil is able to communicate telepathically up to a range of 120 feet. And in combat, as a single action, it can attack 3 times, twice with its sharp saber-like claws, and once with a long stinger at the end of its tail. Finally, I want to talk about the end of the spectrum, the highest ranked devils, pit fiends, who only bow to the archdukes and archduchesses of the 9 hells, who are Asmodeus' chosen few. Pit fiends are the ultimate devil. Arrogant to a fault, they believe themselves better than most anything they face in battle or in politics. And more often than not, they're correct. Physically, a pit fiend may be what many people picture when they think of a devil. Covered from head to toe in thick red scales, they have a long, thick tail and enormous wings that can carry them in flight at incredible speeds. All devils have the ability to see through darkness, both magical and mundane, up to 120 feet. But by the time the devil has reached the power of a pit fiend, it's gained the ability of true sight. Not only does this allow them to see through darkness, They can also see through all invisibility. Illusions have no effect on them, they can see right through them. They can also see into the ethereal plane, and additionally, they can see the original form of any shape changer, whether that be a druid turned into an animal or a dragon taking the form of the elf. A Pit Fiend can just see straight through that and see their true form. On top of this, the Pit Fiend constantly exudes an aura of fear. Anything within 20 feet of the devil must make a DC 21 wisdom save or be frightened until the start of its next turn, or it must once again attempt to make the save. The Pit Fiend is also instinctively a spellcaster, being able to cast Detect Magic and Fireball at will whenever it wants, whilst it can cast Hold Person and Wall of Fire 3 times per day. Finally, the truly scary part. The Pit Fiend can bite you, claw you, smack you with its enormous mace, and smash you with its really long tail, all in one attack action. So for one attack it can hit you 4 times, doing a boatload of damage in all of them. Beyond that, a Pit Fiend has a mountain of health and an armor rating of 19, making its thick-scaled hide tougher to hit through than full plate armor. Certainly not something we're likely going to be facing in Baldur's Gate 3, at least I'm hoping we're not, because that's actually kind of terrifying. It's a good way to wipe an entire party. But I think that with that we're done. I look forward immediately accepting Raphael's pact when we get into early access later this month. Should join me on my evil playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. They've told us to play evil for the early access because most people don't do that when they're playing through the game, which is true. I tend not to play straight evil. It's very rare that I do that in a game, unless I actively go in there saying, okay, I'm going to be evil. So for early access, I think we're going to be taking some devil deals, I think. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you aren't already. And as always, thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye guys.